For me, my philosophy, like I wanted to get people into farming because I thought that was so important. Now I've like totally abandoned that idea. Of course, I would encourage anybody to try it, but I think the most important thing is people grow food at home. I think that, to me now, will have the most impact on people's health, their well-being.
You're listening to How I Grow This, exploring stories of gardeners from across the globe as we learn from their biggest tips and tricks to some of the things not to do. I'm your host, Luke Hammond. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited for today's episode of How I Grow This. I'm joined with my good friend, Stephen Cornett of Nature's Always Right. Maybe you've seen his YouTube channel or followed him through the years. He has a vast experience of knowledge from market garden in the California climates to now moving into homestead into the southern Tennessee climates. And he's traveled all over the world and just got back from one of those trips. He's been on so many farms you can't even believe, and is just a thirst for knowledge kind of guy. And so you are going to glean so much from him today in this conversation. So Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. That's great to be on. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast, so I'm excited to
Hey, there we go.
Share my new nuggets with everybody.
Yeah, I love it. Well, hey, one of the first things we typically do in some episodes is open up with a kind of description of where you're currently growing and or figuring out context, just so that when you're talking about context in the future throughout the podcast, people are going to know, hey, maybe this advice is not the correct advice for me because context regarding growing is everything. So let's talk a little bit about just the different contexts in which you've grown in and describe maybe some of the nuances there, but just talk about growing in general and the context that you're currently growing in and contexts you've grown in the past.
Sure. So I got my start farming in San Diego, California. So very dry climate. We probably got, 10, 12 inches of rain a year. You could even grow through the winter. You could grow all year round. So that was very interesting. Now, I moved to Tennessee about 5 years ago now and started this new journey here. And here we get 50 to 60 inches of rain, super humid. We actually have a winter, so everything dies off. Tons of seasonality that was kind of non-existent in San Diego. San Diego is one of the best places in the world to grow food, I think. It's just like, it's amazing.
There's a lot of
We don't really have a lot of forgiveness, not as many bugs, no stupid Japanese beetles and other terrible bugs that we get here in the South. So yeah, it was a huge learning curve coming here, but it gave me a lot more experience and knowledge, and just I'm able to give people better advice now about what to do because I've had a lot more experience.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Awesome. So now there in Tennessee, what are some of your high temps comparison, high temp and humidity in the summers and then low temp in the winter?
So I'm in East Tennessee. So, the high is 95, 98, maybe 100. And then most of the summer we're in the high 80s and low 90s, I'd say, with, maximum humidity. And this summer we actually got quite a bit of rain. Usually there's a bit of a drought like August, September, but this has just been a really wet spring and summer. So I think I watered the garden twice this year. There's been years in the past where I did have to water, and for a couple of months we had a real drought, which is so funny for me coming from San Diego because we have a 10-month drought, whereas here it doesn't rain for 4 weeks, and people are like, oh my gosh, they're all freaking out.
Right. Well, with the farm that I still have in Missouri, because I'm currently growing in Arizona, you go 2 weeks without rain in that sort of environment with the plants that are growing and the oak trees and all that stuff, you notice, right? Here in Arizona with the mesquites, they are used to it. So it's all about
they'll be fine.
Again, it's all about context.
Yeah.
So walk me through, you've been documenting your journey on YouTube for a number of years, and you chose the handle Nature's Always Right. And when I hear that, at least initially, I kind of go, is it?
Is it?
It kind of positive because nature is hard. So describe to me kind of the philosophy and the thought process behind the Nature's Always Right YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And then kind of what got you into gardening as well.
Sure. So yeah, when I got into all of this, it was from a health perspective, realizing that food is medicine, that most of the things in the store, products that we buy,
Mm,
things that we put on our skin, like all the, now this is like a pretty popular subject. It's totally mainstream to talk about all these things now. Back when I started 14 years ago, hardly anybody was thinking about these things and, trying to like live healthier and take out toxins out of their food. And so really just came from that perspective of like looking at how nature grows things and trying to get as close to the way that nature does things as possible. Because when I
mm,
saw the industrial food system that like America and the West created, it's like, wow, this is so removed from nature. Look at all the pesticides and herbicides and chemicals and the way they
mm,
have to raise chickens and pigs in order for it to be profitable at this mass scale. And, as everything's
mm,
toxic all the way down the line. So it was from that perspective of that God created nature. Um, and we should try to mimic those systems the best that we possibly can. And when I saw farmers like Joel Salatin or various other Darren Doherty or various other people, they were mimicking nature and having these extremely amazing results. And it just makes
mhm,
sense. It just totally
mhm.
makes sense. Of course, like if you fight against nature, you're going to lose every time.
Right, right.
So listen to what it's telling you when you observe it and follow through. So that's
Well,
my channel is all about how to do that, how to farm and raise animals and vegetables and everything as naturally as possible.
I want to double click in that direction you went, because you mentioned something to me that was just so interesting. You said all these things that we put on our skin and these toxins that we take in, um, and it is almost like a taboo topic of like, hey, maybe we're not supposed to be using these. And I don't know what that is, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
lotions, whether that's sunscreen, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
all those things. But it triggered in my mind this thinking of there are so many areas of ease. Everything we seem to do as people in America or gardeners, we do it for ease and comfort. We want air conditioning. We want to not do hard things, and we
Mm-hmm.
want simplicity and comfort in that. And so,
Yeah.
in do you see this principle played out in the garden and maybe in the way that you're farming, where like we're trying as farmers or growers to lean into what's easy for us, and or maybe it's giving us a worse result? Because I immediately double click in and think, well, herbicides are easy. You put it in a tank,
Mm-hmm.
you spray a fence line, and you're good to go. It's a
Yeah.
whole lot more
Yeah.
challenging
I just
than
weed whacked a fence line for a couple hours and yeah. And I was thinking
yeah,
about it, man, I could just be like my neighbor and spray the glyphosate, but I'm not going to do that. There's a
right.
spring and
And
a creek right there. And I know there's people drinking it right down the road. And it's crazy that people are allowed to spray it, but here we are.
yeah, so talk a little bit about that. What are some of the things that you see that may be easier,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not the right direction? Maybe
Sure.
it's not in conjunction with nature and it may not be the right decision to make.
Yeah. I mean, there's countless examples of this in farming. Endless. I mean, one easy one, I guess, would be like tilling. A lot of people will prep their gardens in the spring or end of winter by tilling it, getting the ground, soft again, and tilling in their amendments and all of this. And it is easier in the beginning. And I think a lot of this stuff, it's like the short term versus long term thinking. In the short term, yeah, like tilling will be easier for you, and you'll have it'll be so much easier to plant. But long term, you're going to get more weeds. The soil is going to degrade. It's not going to hold those nutrients as well. The microbes, the earthworms, all these things that the plants live in harmony with so that they can be as pest and disease free as possible. Um,
Mm,
by tilling, you're going to be influencing it more in that direction. Or you could go no-till, and it is more work up front, but over the course of years and long term, the benefits are just too good to pass up, I think. So, I think there's a good argument for tilling once when you're prepping new ground. Like, I think that everybody's kind of figured out that that makes a lot of sense when you're starting things out. But then from then on out, when you're setting up a permanent garden, I wouldn't touch it again. Another example would be like on these fields out here where there's tons of people growing cows. They'll spray a herbicide called 2,4-D, and it's, if you're into agriculture at all, you've probably heard of that. But it kills broadleaf plants. So your fescue and your different grasses, orchard grass that remains untouched, and then these other more noxious weeds that cows and sheep don't like die off. That's what my neighbor does. Or you could do high intensity rotational grazing, which is what I do, and diminish those weeds over time by having sheep, like I have, eat those plants. They drop less weed seeds, and then the soil structure gets better over time. So then those weeds actually don't fill their niche in nature and want to grow up and repair the soil. That's why I like Bermuda grass and some of these really gnarly weeds that you see growing, thistle and Johnson grass and things like this. They're growing in that spot because they're filling a niche in the soil right there to help repair it. And then eventually, once the soil's good enough, that weed would actually not sprout anymore because it's not needed anymore. These are like newer concepts that we didn't know about until the last couple decades. But that is how nature actually works.
Right. So, man, you opened up so many different questions that I have and challenge points for a garden. So a lot of our listeners are in kind of a home context in a home backyard garden.
Mm-hmm.
Thus far we've talked about kind of managing some larger properties from, rotating sheep on pasture and that sort of thing. What are the kind of decisions that people could make to work with nature in a garden context, maybe in like a raised bed?
Sure.
Because
if you think about beds, so
if you think about it there, it's like, okay, that's an immediate shift because these raised beds, we're creating this little tiny ecosystem right there, and it's a little bit different. So talk a little bit about the raised bed concept.
I mean, it's the same mindset from that little bit of larger scale that I was talking about down to the smaller scale. It's that same idea of what can we do to benefit the biology and the structure of our soil or our growing medium, wherever this is happening. So in a raised bed, you can't use a tiller. But I remember back in the day, I did this when I first started gardening. I would take a hoe and till up my raised bed with a hoe and get it all soft and fluffy and then plant my seeds. That was before I knew about no-till and all this. And that's a manual way of doing it, but it's the same thing, trying to get it, this idea of it needs to be softer and fluffier. But I've found over years and years of growing that that's not the case. So one big tip, I guess, would be something I like to do is when I have plants that are kind of done, maybe your kale's going to seed or peppers or whatever it might be, when they're at the end of their life, chop and drop them in the raised bed itself. So just cut them at the soil level, let the plants lay down and let them decompose there. And they will help protect the soil from the sun, keep moisture in, and will even feed the soil from that leftover plant material. Those are a couple of really nice ways I like to help protect things.
Gotcha. So in keeping, we have some of these principles that are talked about, keeping the soil covered all the time and minimizing tillage. And we always try and double click in on context. We open up the conversation talking about these different areas in which you're growing. And when we're stewarding these ecosystems, we're trying to move them from wherever they are to, I guess, as the gardener, wherever we're creatively trying to nurture what we're trying to grow in that garden. Every different crop has different demands and needs, and some soils are going to be more naturally suited to grow a specific crop. And a lot of times, as like market farmers or other growers, we're trying to grow stuff that's not naturally suited for that environment or that context, right? Let's talk a little bit about some practices that you use in raised beds that allow you to grow things that you might otherwise not grow. Or are you doing that anymore?
Yeah, I do that somewhat. I kind of just grow now what I want to eat and what I end up eating. And I try to just focus on those things and not go too far from that. Just say, you end up wasting produce, or you grow, you try this weird bean, and it's like, I didn't like it that much. So now I know what I like now. I just double down on all
Yeah.
that stuff. But
Yeah.
well, one thing I did this year with my corn, because it creates so much shade. I had like some zinnias that came up from like seed that had fallen, and I just let them grow, let a few of the zinnias grow with my corn. And bees and moths and butterflies, they love the zinnias. So this will help pollination of my corn. Because if corn doesn't get fully pollinated, that like usually near the ends, like you won't get the kernels there, and that's because it didn't get fully pollinated. And that was one little thing. Or just even with using that shade, and I always love thinking about vertical space in a garden. If you have a really tall vertical plant, now you've created that shade. So now you can grow something that maybe is a little bit more shade loving underneath it, or even something like a basil will grow underneath corn really easily. So that if you don't have a lot of space, you don't have an open bed for basil or something else that you might want to grow, then it can easily just go under that plant, like corn.
Right. I've recently seen some pictures of Nicole Burke's gardens with Gardenary, and they are the most densely planted canopy of vegetables and food I've ever really seen. I mean, it's just so dense. Do you experiment or play with different densities of planting, like with the corn? Like, is it just a full-on canopy, or do you allow space? And has that varied from San Diego to Tennessee?
Yeah, I've realized over the years too. Like I started with like square foot gardening when I first learned to garden, and that is not dense enough. Square foot gardening, I think, provides too much space for most of the crops that they recommend. You can get way closer and still have a great crop. I think when you're trying to maximize the density, though, you just want to pay attention to the time of year that it is. You can only go the most dense when the sun has the most light intensity. If we're going now into August, into September, the light intensity is fading. So I would stop going as dense now if I'm going into like my fall garden. I wouldn't overdo it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think as for gardeners, you should always try to experiment with the spacing and see if you can tighten it up even more and plant, even closer, and just to see what happens, and see if the radish, does it create a radish bulb, or did it not work that good? Can you grow 3 beets next to each other and have it still produce a beet size that you like versus some ginormous beet with just one spacing out? You might find, I've found that so many times where like beets are a great example. I don't want some big gigantic beet. It takes, I can't eat a whole beet in a sitting. I want to space it out a little bit. So having these smaller ones that I can just, when there's like say 3 growing next to each other, I can just take one of them out, let the other 2 keep growing. And I think about that as those 2 other beets are in my fridge because they're not decaying. They're just sitting around waiting for me to harvest them. Once I harvest them, now the clock starts and you got to eat it.
Right.
So that's one way I like to do that.
So let's double click on beets, because it's an interesting crop that people may grow, or in a lot of different contexts, like you described. Some people direct seed beets, some people transplant beets, some people paper pot beets. What has been your favorite technique for growing beets, and how are you sowing those seeds together? What density is too much? How do you get the 3 beets together? What's kind of been your structure for that?
For beets, I've always direct seeded. When I was messing around with a paper pot transplanter, I did plant them like that too, and it worked out great. It worried me because I was like, these look really leggy and weak, and they don't look good, but they did grow beets. I think for root crops in general, just direct sowing, and it makes the most sense when I compare it to other things in nature, like a tree. A bare root tree or a tree planted from seed is always going to be the best tree because that root system never had to recalculate or readapt. Like when you take a tree out of a 2-year-old pot, the tree thought it was setting up its whole life for this little pot. where it thought it would live the rest of its life, but all of a sudden now it's in this hole with this totally different soil structure, and they can freak
Mm-hmm.
out and have an issue. So I think that for all plants, especially ones like a root crop where they're really doing that calculation, it makes more sense to direct sow. And it's just always done that. But and for a beet seed, just like chard, one of those seeds could sprout more than one plant. It's possible.
Mm.
So I will just plant like 2 beet seeds, and you might get 2, you might get 3 in that one spot. And for when I'm spacing, like I don't think about inches or numbers anymore, because I've seen so many beets or other crops grow. I just kind of have it in my mind. Well, a beet's like this big, so how much space do I need between the next plant? And I need a little bit of space too, just for their leaves, and so the sunlight can get in there. So every like
Mm-hmm.
3-4 inches, you can
Mm-hmm.
easily have another set of beets.
Right.
And if you don't mind them being smaller, then don't thin them out. Leave 2 or even 3 beet plants and let
Mm-hmm.
that play out and experiment with that. I just think it's so important to experiment in your garden every single year. Just allow different things to happen and see, because you'll make a discovery and be like, oh, wow, this is like so much better. I'll just grow beets like this now. And I'll get way more beets in a smaller area because I don't mind getting smaller beets. But if you juice
Mm-hmm.
beets, you juice a beet every day or something, then that's a different context. And you'd want to think about, okay, well, I actually want the biggest beet I can get for the most juice. So I am going to thin my beets out down to 1. And I might even space it up to 5-6 inches so that it gets really
Mm-hmm.
big and I get more juice.
Yeah, yeah. So as you started talking about experimentation, I think you're one of the ones that I kind of look to of experimentation, of just the way that your mind works and all the stuff you've done. So you've played around with a lot of creating your own fertilizers and microbial inoculants and
Mm-hmm.
Korean natural farming, which has kind of grown in popularity, and then another style very similar called JDAM. Um, are you able to kind of describe the differences between
Mm-hmm.
Korean natural farming and JDAM for those who
Mm-hmm.
may have had some recollection about what those things are, and what the different nuances are?
Sure. So Korean natural farming, typically when people are referring to that, they're referring to Master Cho's Korean natural farming. I've noticed that nowadays, because of the Jadam's growth, now people are saying Korean natural farming as like a general term for all Korean techniques, but that's not exactly accurate. So Korean natural farming, Master Cho, this is he actually just passed away this year, but he dedicated his whole life to natural farming and these different techniques from Japan, Korea, different places in Asia, and he spread them all over Asia. And it's basically a system of creating all of your own nutrients, inoculants, fertilizers. These things, some of them can even be taken by humans, because you can make lactobacillus bacteria, oriental herbal nutrient, which is just a bunch of different tinctured herbs like ginger and garlic and licorice root. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's like a full system of growing plants, but it is extremely complex. It takes a long years to master it and get good at creating these inputs that then you would use in your garden. I recommend that for the most nerdy of us that want to go,
For those who are the most nerdy.
if you're not looking to do a ton of work and take years of your life to get good at it, then I wouldn't mess with it, honestly. I think that Jadam is a far better choice for people for the general person. And in general, Jadam, the reason it was created, so Master Cho, and then there's Yongsang Cho. Yongsang Cho is Master Cho's son. And Yongsang Cho went around with Master Cho throughout his travels, learned from him, learned the whole Korean natural farming system. And then when he got older, I think he has a master's in chemistry, and he eventually decided, this is too complex, and some of these things in these poorer countries, they don't have access to, because like brown sugar is a big thing that you need in Korean natural farming to make many of the inputs. That's either too expensive or they're not able to find it in certain countries. Okay,
Mhm.
places in Africa or the Philippines or wherever it might be. So it's cost prohibitive. So he created a system that is far, far cheaper, requires almost nothing, and as well created his own pesticides that are made naturally from natural compounds. So his, to me, is if you're going to say this is the future of agriculture and like these are inputs that we could use in the future for large scale, then Jadam is the ultimate. And it's also easier for people who want to make their own inoculants and fertilizers at home. It's so simple. It's just like for the inoculant, it's potato, salt, and water, and then leaf mold soil is your inoculant. That's where you're getting the microbes that you're then growing out with those other inputs. Yeah.
So where do people go to learn about that, and who's some of the top resources? Maybe to find specific recipes and how to use them, and
hmm So that's one issue with Korean natural farming, especially now that Master Cho has passed, is that there is no like official organization. There's kind of one that's still going, but not really. All of his old books they're very difficult to find now, translated. And there's different various people online that you can learn a lot of this from.
Mhm.
Learning in person. So I'd say Chris Trump and Eric Weinert, Pure KNF, those guys. I should make some more videos about it too. I've filmed a ton of videos about it. Actually, I just haven't put them out. Jadam is much easier once again because Youngsong has made a book that's translated into like 10 different languages, and he's
Mhm.
coming out with a third edition of it. I visited him in South Korea 6 months ago, and I learned some of the new things that he's worked on and researched, and he's made Jadam even simpler. He's created a pesticide that's far easier to create, that you don't need soft water anymore. It's basically microbes that are killing the bugs, which
Mhm.
like BT or some of these the ones that are commercially available, it's some of that similar idea, but we're not distilling it down to a single like Bacterius thorungus or however you say it. That's BT. It's a super common worm killer that's organic.
Mhm.
And anyways, so the work that he's doing to me is like the most interesting, other than some of this large scale animal agriculture stuff. That
Mhm.
is very game changing. But Jadam to me is the most game changing thing, and for agriculture,
Mhm.
and if you want to get into that for your home scale garden as well, it's massively beneficial.
Mhm.
But there's just so many ways to skin the cat, because if you just use really good compost and vermicompost, and your soil's set up good, and you're doing no-till, you're not going to have issues. You're going to grow amazing vegetables. You could do Korean natural farming and grow amazing vegetables. You could do just Jadam techniques, grow amazing vegetables. You could do biodynamic, grow amazing vegetables. Because all these techniques are mimicking nature at the end of the day. They're providing nutrients and homes and resources for the microbes that then they create more nutrients for the plants. They all communicate together, and that's what creates the thriving garden in the end.
Mhm. Mhm. When you think of a lot of these different techniques, and a lot of us in Western culture, and not really to dive into religion,
Mm-hmm.
um, but th- sometimes there's a misunderstanding of different kinds of things. I think back to maybe 10 years ago where, um, in certain circles, doing yoga was
Mm-hmm.
like completely taboo. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even stretch that way. You're going to open
Mm-hmm.
yourself up to X, Y, or Z. Um, certain people have a certain connotation associated with electroculture,
Yeah.
which is, or a certain connotation associated with planting with the moon cycles, or a certain
Mm-hmm.
connotation with biodynamic,
Mm-hmm.
um, with
Permaculture has some
biodynamic
woo
has,
woo stuff in there
yeah, has
too.
this sort
Yeah.
of like spiritual element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think? Why do you think there's all these nuances within all that's going on? You know, through these different techniques? Is it all just from cultural background, or is there a lot of like religious connectivity there?
Interesting question.
What's your perspective? It was just,
yeah, I think there is an element of spirituality to it, because the longer you grow food, like there's no denying that this is some sort of design that we live in. There's no way to escape that. I mean, you can't Big Bang and evolution yourself into thinking that this just came here by chance and something was created out of nothing. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. So, you have to, so I think that's where it comes from. So, there's, the pagans worship nature, and I see biodynamic as more of a pagan way of looking at nature, I guess, or the worshiping
pagan
of nature.
Defined as
people who worship nature, as people who worship the creation rather than the creator.
Than a creator. Gotcha. Okay.
But it doesn't mean that. That's the thing, is that there's truth weaved into many different religions. There's truth weaved into all sorts of concepts. It doesn't mean that it's ultimately true, because there is ultimate truth at the end of the day. But I think that's people are tapping into that. They're seeing things just like there's like love your neighbor as yourself. Everybody in every religion basically agrees to that, because that is ultimate truth. And even though maybe you don't believe in Jesus, but you're still able to see that is ultimate truth. So I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is people trying to make a name for themselves. Oh, I've created this unique system that this is the way that you do it. And if you got to do it my way, and if you follow my teaching, then, you'll have, this is the ultimate way to do it. And but I've realized, I kind of compared all those different natural systems as one thing, because they're all accomplishing the same thing, just through a little bit different ways. I don't know. That's an interesting question, philosophical.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to. It sparked in me this great question, because I've been, again, as I look at all these different things, I'm wondering some of the nuances, because there are correct things. So I'm gonna, in a moment of farm transparency, my farm that I'm currently working on in Arizona, the context is high elevation, desert, with very, very challenging climates and soil types. And I have the worst weed pressure that I've seen of any starting ground. That's from Johnson grass. I've got Bermuda, and I've got pigweed that has grown up for the last 5 years and been tilled, and then allowed all the seeds to express and then drop for the last 5 years. And so, I've got rhizomal activity with that Bermuda. I've got the rhizomal activity with the Johnson grass. I've got an excessive seed bank of pigweed. And, I didn't mention goat heads too.
Oh,
so
no. Those are the worst.
So and sandburrs. So I have literally the 5 nastiest, noxious, most challenging weed sources out there in this farm. And so, my strategy, while at the end of the day, I would love to transition into a no-till environment, I want to express as many of those weed seeds to the top and flush them out and stay ahead of that weed pressure, while still beginning to build out a biologically active soil in soils that aren't naturally biologically active. I've got heavy zinc, I've got heavy other, issues going on within the soil profile, and I've got really, really low organic matter on top of that. So it's we're working with this environment that's extremely challenging, with low organic matter. What would be your encouragement or your advice to a guy like me in this kind of situation?
Yeah. Well, if you had unlimited money, I'd be I'd be dumping compost and woody material and leaves and as much organic material as possible. But especially on a farm, that's not typically not possible. Just dump money. So if you could get free resources from tree companies and things like that, but you're in Arizona, so there's not that many trees. But I would say JMS probably is one of the number one things I'd recommend because it's just so inexpensive. It's so easy to make it into a large scale. It fits right into your tractor's
Uh-huh.
sprayer,
Uh-huh.
and let those microbes just, do their
Right.
job of unlocking things.
Yeah. So that's very similar approach. I'm trying to build a lot of um, micro populations by doing that and doing a lot of different things. Again, I don't really have the time and bandwidth on top of bringing stuff in order to be making my own fertilizer. I need to be
Yeah.
learning some of that stuff.
John, what is it?
And I
John Kemp's company. He's kind of taken the reins there and he's making all this stuff. So, yeah.
I'll attest to the products that are coming out of AEA as to
AEA, yeah.
it's unbelievable some of the results that I'm seeing
Yeah.
and I've switched almost exclusively to AEA products this year.
Yep.
They're just powerful.
That's awesome. Yeah, so he's a guy who's taking all these techniques and then putting it into this, commercially available product that you can use that is all naturally derived, right? So,
right.
Yeah. And with the focus on biology.
Right. Focusing on biology and leaning in there. So I want to double click in on what is your favorite crop to grow?
Favorite crop to grow? Gosh. Well, any fruit or berries, but that's not a vegetable.
Is it your favorite to grow or to eat? It doesn't have to be a vegetable. It can be anything.
To eat.
Yeah.
But my favorite to grow, I really like potatoes and sweet potatoes.
Okay.
There's just something so fun about digging up, and there's like this enormous surplus of potato and
gold.
Sweet potato.
Digging up gold.
Yeah, it feels like digging gold, and they last a long time. I love that I can just keep eating them for months after I harvested it. I really enjoy those a lot. And any rhizomal or tuber type, I like those.
What's kind of some of your favorite varieties that you've been growing within that potato realm?
I haven't gotten too adventurous, just Yukon Golds, and I did try the different sweet potatoes, like the purple sweet potato, and I'm trying to remember the names of the. I can't remember the variety off the top of my head. I just bought slips from the feed store, or I bought organic slips or not organic potatoes just from the store, and then I root them out. So Beauregard, and that's another sweet potato I've done. Yeah, I never got that crazy with them.
Do you do two different croppings of that a year on your potatoes? Maybe not sweet potatoes because you probably only don't have the time. But
just potatoes. I would, not sweet potato.
Okay, so your potatoes. When are you putting your potatoes in Eastern Tennessee?
Anytime after last Friday, June 1st would be a totally safe time to do it.
Gotcha.
And then it kind of gets too hot. I guess I probably could get away with it in August at some point and do it again. I just haven't done it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've played around with that a couple times. I like harvesting potatoes in the fall. It's a lot more pleasurable of an experience than harvesting in
summer
in the heat. Specifically on digging potatoes. And I feel like you don't again, the sunlight pressure, the pressure on creating that green, and you throw out potatoes that may have gotten that green on the outside. I do like that. Have you ever played around with any of the fingerling potatoes or like a waxy variety potato, or mostly like in the starch category? No. Okay.
I haven't.
Talk to me. I think, was it a video that you had done? Maybe it wasn't. Have you ever tested the difference between your fungal growth and populations and bacteria? Or have you ever done like the rice test for measuring bacteria in your soil?
No, I never have.
Okay.
I've looked at it under microscopes, but other than that, or the microbiometer test, I've done that on my field.
Okay. So you have. So the microbiometer, you've been using that tool and resource. What are your thoughts on that?
Haven't used it in a year or two, but if it's accurate, it's cool to see some change over time if you're trying to push it in a certain direction. I like that tool. Right. It's pretty cheap. And then just like a simple Brix spectrometer, I think, is a great tool for a home gardener to
Yeah.
have. I think it's a great tool for kids too, like to get them more excited about the garden because you get to go out there and squirt some liquid on the little device and you can look at
Hmm.
it through the telescope and then see where am I at, and you guys can record your sugars. And it's a
Right.
simple way. It's a really simple way just to kind of see how your plants are maybe reacting to some compost or inoculant that you put in your soil, and um,
Yeah.
yeah, and try to get it better every year.
How important do you think it is to be inspiring to our next generation? Some of the things that you're talking about, because I feel like our age group and
Yeah,
our age category,
yeah,
we had experienced a large separation between
hmm,
nature, and there's been some books come out about this.
yeah.
And The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv and
Interesting.
others. I don't know if you've read that book,
I
but
haven't.
um, I've seen this kind of tidal wave of people trying to move back to the land and create
Hmm,
homesteads
hmm,
and homestead for a while, but it kind of feels like, maybe I'm
hmm,
wrong, it feels like we're on a downswing again, and people are like, wow, homesteading's really, really hard,
yeah,
and the COVID scare's 5 years removed,
hmm,
and we're gonna kind of like scale back. And
hmm.
how important do you think it
It's
is
true.
to inspire people to be planting a garden and getting back in the garden and doing the work? And is it
Yeah.
just a waste of money to plant a garden, or do you actually get more money out of it?
Yeah, those are all things I've wrestled with since I started gardening and farming. When I was younger, when I was 23 or 23, something like that, when I started, um, I was so gung ho. I was like, man, if we can just get 1 million market gardeners in America, everyone would be healthy. Like these corporations wouldn't control our health like this, and we wouldn't have to go to the hospital. And which I still think that that's true. But
Uh-huh.
it's not feasible because people don't want to farm and people don't want to grow food, and it's because it's a brutal existence compared to working in an office or doing some other job where you could make 80,000 a year rather than working 60 to 80 hours a week and making that same amount of money. Of course, there's outliers. There's farms that do make a ton of money and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that is possible too, but that's not the norm. Um,
Right.
I think I've talked to other farmers. There's a Japanese farmer on my trip that I talked about, and he was really wanting to get more young Japanese people into farming too, because he sees the problem in Japan. There's population decline and nobody's interested in farming. So who's going to grow our food ultimately? And I think that this leads us to AI and robotics and the way that the entire world seems to be going is that manufacturing and agriculture and a lot of these industrialized systems are going to be automated in some way. Obviously, I'm not into that. I'd rather that not happen, but um, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen because, yeah, labor is expensive. Humans are expensive. And if you could get that price of labor down now in places like Thailand, you can hire a farmer for like $10, $15 a day.
Uh-huh.
So for the price of one guy to come help me on my farm, I could hire 10. So in countries like that, labor still is possible to hire. But in places with huge economies and that have a lot more wealth, like America, I don't know. That won't work. So yeah. Anyways, that's why for me my philosophy, like I wanted to get people into farming because I thought that was so important. Now I've like totally abandoned that idea. Of course, I would encourage anybody to try it, but I think the most important thing is people grow food at home. I think that to me now will have the most impact on people's health, their well-being, and limiting the amount of food that we need from the grocery store. And people figured that out during COVID that, hey, I can't get eggs. I can't get, or actually this year, right? There's a big egg shortage because of the avian flu. And, you know, the food system's very fragile. A wrench goes in and a lot of things get screwed up because it's so centralized. So whether that's, meat, the processing of meat is owned by 4 companies or 5 companies.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that goes throughout the entire industry. So that's why I think it is really important that you grow your own food. And I have to buy stuff from the grocery store from the Mennonites. I can't I'm not growing it all myself. And whenever you buy from somebody else, unless it's a really good farmer, you notice the quality of the produce is not very good. You're not as satisfied. There's not as much flavor. You're not getting as much nutrition. So that's why, I'll always have at least a garden and some chickens. Maybe I don't always do my own meat and things like this, but um, just supplementing your diet, and it's just fun. It's more fun to cook when hey, yeah, we got all this okra from the garden, and now, wow, we're eating this. It tastes so good. But nothing beats that feeling. And I think that's one of your first year or two, the garden probably will be more expensive than what you're pulling out of it. But in the future, I know I save tons of money on growing food because my soil's all set up, my beds are all set up. I know how to do it, and it's just that learning curve.
The learning
in the
curve
beginning.
is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's the most worthwhile hobby in the world, personally, but I'm biased.
No, I love, yeah, maybe a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this trip that you went on, and you traveled to all these different small scale farms, and even the guy that is, the son of the founder of Korean natural farming. What were you seeing over there? Were you seeing tools and techniques that far surpass some of the things going on in America?
The big difference is that we are so large scale in America. The idea of a 500-acre farm in Asia is like insane. Maybe in China. I'm sure they do it. But in places like Korea or Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, that idea doesn't exist. Like, it's 10 acres or less, for most of these people. I did see one rice farm that was probably 100 acres or something. But yeah, in general, everything's smaller. And like in Japan, they have all these machines that are specifically for each type of crop. So he had like a potato harvester machine, and he had a green onion planting machine, and a rice planting machine, and I don't know how many, he had like 30 different, it reminded me of a BCS walk behind tractor. It's like that, but for all these different purposes. That was super fascinating. That's something that we don't have really.
Yeah, I think it's getting closer to that with the mechanical transplanter company, and actually a lot of overseas manufacturers are bringing some of these tools over here, or companies like Modern Grower that are introducing some of these tools to the market garden space. One of the newest irrigation things that has kind of taken America by storm this year is called the Sumi soaker hose.
I saw Ben Hartman playing with that thing.
Yeah, and so the Sumi has come in, and rather than setting up all these wobblers every 10 feet with your poly and all these fittings and all that stuff, you roll this thing out, and it gives a perfect square watering system, very, very gentle, and it's incredible. And people have been using those, and you can irrigate lawns. It's a very cool system designed in Japan, and very cool, very economical, a great use of plastic. And it's actually less overall plastic than a lot of the other systems, with way better even watering. And then, the Jang seeder, which is probably the most popular precision seeder for a market farmer, that's a Korean-made product. And then there's a bunch of other, off-brand manufacturers from China or whatever you can get through Alibaba, and different techniques to get them back into the States, as we're trying to, in many ways, catch up to small-scale agriculture in other countries.
Because that's what they've been doing the whole time. And that's why they have all these machines. That's why the paper pot transplanter exists and all this, because they're doing it on a much, much smaller scale. Their tractors are smaller. Everything's smaller, right, compared to the stuff going on here. 'Cause we're doing all these grains and corn and soy and
right. And we focused on the commodity crops, and then we focused on even the vegetable crops. Thousands of acres at a time, bringing in strawberries, right? And it's just mob stalking people coming through migrant workers harvesting strawberries
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that's the technique for harvesting strawberries, because we still haven't completely
No,
fixed
not yet.
hand harvesting
Yeah.
um, crops like that. It's coming very quickly, but
Yeah.
it's still not there.
Yeah.
Um, so that's very interesting. Um,
Yeah. That, and then one of the things I noticed is that, so many things are just so similar. The farmers have that
mhm,
same passion, that same desire to give people healthy food and inspire others to grow food. And all the people I visited were, I'm searching out for more organic or regenerative
mhm,
people too, right? But just everyone has their own system for the context that they're in, and that's why we're kind of hammering on that point of context and why are you doing it, what are you doing it for, and that's what's going to make your gardening or farming the best that it can be, by keep dialing in
mhm,
those systems.
mhm. So, what would be your recommendation for people that are beginning to see a system or the start of a system? Do they need to follow that system to completion to get the results that they're looking for? Or do you think it's okay to pull from KNF and JDAM or
Yeah.
Jadam? I guess
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
pradam that
Chadam.
right. You're
Yeah.
probably more correct.
Chadam. Yeah. Chadam. It means people who do as nature. People like nature,
Oh,
basically. Yeah.
okay, gotcha. I love it. Thank you. You should have
Yeah.
corrected me on that way sooner.
Sorry.
Um, I've heard it that way,
I
for
know.
whatever.
People are,
So,
yeah. I lived in Korea.
um,
I know. Yeah. So that's why I know.
there we go. He lived in Korea. He
Yeah. For two
knows.
two
He knows
years.
things. He knows things. Um, so what could be the pitfalls of pulling from all these
Oh,
different contexts, or what
yeah.
could be the benefit of pulling from all these different contexts?
Sure. So first I'll say to the perfectionist type A person out there, you don't have to follow the system to the letter like a formula. This is nature, and there's a lot of give and take.
Mm,
This isn't a baking recipe where if you're off by a little bit, it screws up the cake. It's not like that. Nature is pretty forgiving, actually. And I'm somebody who takes from all these different systems. I understand what all these different techniques do and what they're trying to achieve, whether that's, I want more biology in my soil. Okay, well, then
uh-huh,
I could do that with compost. I could do that and then make it a compost extract by just putting it in water. I could make a aerated tea from my vermicompost and do it that way. I could make JMS, which is the Jadam method of growing out microbes. And well, what do I have? I don't have potatoes. Okay, I can't do JMS, so I have some really great compost in my backyard. Okay, I'm gonna make a compost extract and then water that in my garden. Boom. Or you know whatever the thing that you're looking to add to your garden, um, you can pull that from wherever. Oh, my tomatoes need more calcium. You could buy like a chelated mineral supplement and just add that in, or I could do Korean natural farming and use water soluble calcium that I've made, and it's just stored in my garage, and I can spray that on the leaves and give them some calcium. So um, it's just understanding each thing and what it does, or just be more general purpose and literally don't worry about it. Just buy or create really good compost and put good compost, in your garden. Feed the plants when they need it, and that's all you need to do. I myself have grown on 100% compost without any extra stuff. I know multiple farms that just use really good compost. They grow great vegetables. So
uh-huh.
because compost is an all-purpose, it has everything. It has the microbes, it has minerals, it has nitrogen, potassium, phosphate. You know, you're covering all your bases with that. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's my little spiel.
There it is. Here's a kind of a little bit of a lightning round. What are the 3 things you should never do in your garden?
Uh, let's see. 3 things you never should do. Don't overwater. Um, don't use pesticides or herbicides, and don't harvest too late. I had
Don't harvest too late.
a raccoon came in the other night and got all my corn because I was like, I just want to wait one more day, and he got me.
It's always that. It's always that on corn.
Um, yeah, I guess those are my tips.
Okay, in the first
Yeah,
three were use compost or focus on biology
yeah.
and um
Just yeah, soil
what would be
health in
the
general. Do whatever it takes to get your soil as healthy as quickly as possible. So yeah, keep it covered. Make sure it's moist but not too overly wet, like sopping wet.
uh
That's why I said don't overwater. Overwatering. This is why a lot of people's tomatoes turn out bad, or they get blossom end rot, or your watermelon isn't as sweet. Maybe you watered a ton right before you harvested it, or um, yeah, watering is a skill that takes a bit of time and experience. But once you figure out, oh, this is the moisture that soil and the plants like, you're always looking for that. But you just dig down in the soil. Okay, it's got enough. In the beginning, you under and over water a lot until you really figure it
yeah.
out.
Or you under and overwater a lot just because you're resetting your automated irrigation systems
Yeah.
and you're here in Arizona, your days change. I mean,
Mm,
if you have a very 109, 105-degree day with heavy winds, that water is just necessary. Just
yeah.
the plant is using that water to cool themselves through
Mm,
transpiration. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring that water up to cool themselves. Um, and while the stomata is closed, they're still in like recovery mode. There's just so much
right.
going on in nature, and it's doing it on itself. And so,
Yeah,
playing with that
that's right.
moisture level of your soil is a challenge in and of itself. So, man, Stephen, thank you so much. There's a lot of good nuggets all the way through out there. And do you have any last words that you'd want to share with the audience here?
I'd say if you haven't raised chickens yet, I would definitely recommend raising chickens or trying an animal. Try animal agriculture. My whole gardening and farming career, all I did was have layer chickens. But since I came to Tennessee, I got into raising my own meat and pigs and sheep and chickens for meat, and that's just been a really amazing experience. Growing a vegetable is a wonderful experience, and that accomplishment feeling that you get. But for me, filling my freezer with meat has been kind of like an ultimate experience for me, because this feeds me for a long time, and it's harder to get animal based foods that are grown at a really high level, and
Hmm.
so, or it's really expensive if it is grown at a high level. So that's been super fun for me. If you're a vegetarian or something, then I'd just say um, try a different variety of whatever it is that's your favorite vegetable. So like I grew these provider bush beans forever, and I still really like them. They're a stringless green bean, but I tried the yard long bean, which well, I'm
Uh-huh.
sure a lot of people have grown those, but those are amazing. I just like they're so prolific. They're like really long and easier to harvest. You can chop them and boom. The texture's not as good as your standard green bean, but um, there's just so much variety out there that I just love for people to try something new, and get it kind of inspires you again and gets you excited about the garden again. If you just get stuck growing the same thing every year, it can get boring. So yeah, try something new when it comes to food production.
So the best way to get out of the rut is to just literally like jump out of the rut and try something new? Or is there any other like ways to go about that?
That for me is like that works for me, because like I can get bored if I'm not doing something new all the time.
Mm,
So like I was getting bored with gardening, honestly, because I by the time I got here, I'd been doing it for like 9 years. I'm really good at it now. And what's the next challenge? What's the next thing? Like, that's my personality, right? So that's
mm.
why for me, and learning about animal agriculture and like having more land, like that always really was like inspiring and interesting to me. So I want to try this, because how can I affect a larger area and heal the land and make it more fertile and all of this? Animals are a really, really great way to do that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. Stephen Cornett with Nature's Always Right. Where do people find
Yeah.
what you're up to, and are you still posting videos on YouTube and
Yeah.
that sort of thing?
Yes. Now that I'm back, I'm creating local stuff again. But yeah, the last year it was just different farms in Asia. So you can check those out at Nature's Always Right on my YouTube channel, Nature's Always Right across social media, and nature'salwaysright.com. If you want any courses that I've made or other, I've got like garden bed plans or different little resources like that for people.
Very cool. So what are the courses that you have available right now for people?
Right now it's just chickens. So I've incorporated Korean natural farming actually into this course. So one of the amazing things that Master Cho created was a system for animals and creating inputs for them. So you can create, whether that's fermented feed or lactobacillus for their gut system, probiotics. Even in the way that you're raising them, you can train their gut from an early age to actually be more expanded. And you use brown rice to do that. It's really interesting. And so it's that combined with just your conventional chicken raising techniques, and from whether you're hatching eggs or raising chicks or whatever you want to do with chickens, it's kind of an all-in-one course.
Very cool. Very cool. Nature's Always Right. Stephen Cornett, thank you so much for jumping on the How I Grow This podcast. And it's been a joy of an hour, and look forward to many more conversations to come. I think I learned something new every single time we chat. So love it. Love it. Love it. And thanks for staying tuned all the way to the end. We're so excited that you're here, and that probably means that you enjoyed what you heard. You found some value in it. If you could, go and share this with somebody that you know that really helps push it forward in the algorithm. Hit a like, a subscribe, hit a review. It makes all the difference for us. Thank you for listening to the How I Grow This podcast, and we are dedicated to bringing more of these stories to you to help you grow at the next level. We'll see you.